together. So which is exciting when we can share our successes and, keep each other. So that gives everybody else hope, right?
Right, Sarah, I just sent you a note with my email again because I didn't get the materials yet.
I haven't sent it yet, so I'm going to
Oh,
send it
sorry.
right now. I was just waiting to make sure anybody else was coming in. So you guys
No problem.
should get the email right now with the class materials for today. So today we're gonna dive into the 94 vital activities that relate to a real estate transaction. So we're going to take a deep dive into that. And basically what you're going to get is two checklists, one for buy sides and one for sell sides. And these are all the things that we expect you to do to set the client up for success and having a winning experience. And anything that you do in your business needs to, if you do it more than 3 times, needs to be duplicated, right? It needs to have a process and a system. And that's really when you look at teams or individual agents who are scaled, right, and they're maximizing their output, it's because they have systems, right? They have systems and processes that fire off. If you go to McDonald's, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but McDonald's actually has a McDonald's University. And this is how they can have a 300% turnover rate every year in employees, but still make money, is they have the university, and everybody who goes to the university understands that if they fill a cup, a small cup with the right amount of ice, and they hit the button, that cup will fill up to the top, won't go over, won't go under, right? It will fill perfectly with the right amount of ice. That's a system, all right? That's a process. And so when we think about real estate, we want to scale and be efficient. It's all about having those systems and processes. So with that being said, let me go ahead and do a share screen of my PowerPoint, and let's jump in. All right, so you guys should have got the materials. Let me grab my notes over here. You would think I don't need notes after teaching this class many times, but I still want my notes. So what are the 94 vital activities? And so I threw this in here. I added this screen in here because when we talk about the greatest salesman in the world, and you guys have probably heard me all talk about that. And if you're taking SLAM, you know what I'm talking about with the greatest salesman in the world. If you don't have it, it's a fantastic read. It's excellent for real estate agents. And so, in fact, I just am finishing listening to Matthew McConaughey's new book, Green Lights, and he's getting interviewed by Brian Buffini. And I was wondering why. I was like, why would Brian Buffini interview Matthew McConaughey, a movie star, about his new book? And so I was driving home from our camping trip, and I had my earbuds, and I was listening to it in the Jeep. And he actually read The Greatest Salesman in the World, and he talks about how that book made an impact on his life. And so now I'm super curious to listen to his interview with Brian Buffini, because I want to hear how they spin that and relate that to real estate. So I put this in here because scroll 1 is today I begin a new life. And then in a passage in there is what's on the screen, is that in truth, the only difference between those who have failed and those who have succeeded lies in the difference of their habits. Good habits are the key to success. Bad habits are the unlocked door to failure. That's the first law I will obey, which precedeth all others, as I will form good habits and become their slave. And so when we think about how does that apply to real estate, having the good discipline of doing open houses every weekend, prospecting, being intentional of having those conversations like Tommy just shared, right? He struck up a conversation with someone who was a complete stranger that led to a deal. And so, thinking about those things that are our habits that lead to our success. And so I would really challenge you to think about how you're spending your time, because a lot of us get caught up in the minutia, right? I will share that I had to remove the news button on my Facebook feed because it was becoming so obsessive and overwhelming with everything that's going on in the world. And I was freaked out to do it. I had a little bit of anxiety, but then I realized in the following days how much my anxiety and my focus had come back, and the anxiety came down and my focus came back into play, because it was like crack, right? Every time that little notification was on my phone, I was like, oh, I got to see what article's happening, what crazy thing is going on, right? And so really challenge yourself, and where are you focusing your time and your efforts? Are you focusing them on the money-making activities? And so we're going to dive into so there are some vital activities, right, that have to happen, but they're not by definition money-making activities. And so we're going to get into that and talk about what are money-making activities versus the activities that are vital, have to happen, right, but don't necessarily have to happen by you. Hold on a second. I got somebody trying to jump in. There we go. It's Fawn coming in, Tommy. All right. So the first page in your material, if you guys have ever watched any of those nature shows, you recognize this, right? I love watching them, but then I always get upset when the gazelle gets because because I don't want any of them to get eaten, but I understand that it is the law of the jungle, right? So every day in Africa, the gazelle wakes up and the gazelle knows, and the gazelle can actually he's not faster than the lion, but he can actually outmaneuver the lion. And so the lion has very short endurance, right? Can go very fast for a short period of time. So the gazelle knows that it has to outmaneuver that lion or it will be eaten. And every day, constantly the same thing, right? The king of the jungle wakes up and says that he knows he must outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve to death. And so the question is, are you a gazelle or a lion? Either way, right, you better be running. And there's nothing wrong with being a gazelle, because gazelles they can outmaneuver, right? And so we think about real estate. Can we outmaneuver our competition, right? Can we outsmart them? Do we have the endurance to do what it takes when others give up? 87%, you guys, of new licensees are out of the business within 5 years. 87%. And some of those are within the first 2 years. They don't even renew their license, right? They get through the first process and they're done, right? So when we think about that, can you outmaneuver? Do you have the endurance, right? And then you think about the lion, right? The lion's the badass, right? He's the king of the jungle. And so can you be the king of real estate, right? Can you be the king of your market and your, amongst your peers and your competitors? So I love that. I love that analogy. So the quote up here by Nick Saban. Y'all know who Nick Saban is, right? The football coach for Alabama, kind of a hard ass dude, right? People assume everyone wants to reach their potential and be the best they can. I've concluded most only want to be average and do just enough to get by. Kind of stings a little bit, right? When we read that and we think about it, because is it true? Most of us are leaving 75% of our potential on the table. So think about that, Tommy. 75%. When you were doing, well, I don't know if you still compete or not with the bodybuilding stuff, but could you leave 75% of your efforts and your workouts on at home and still win competition?
You could if you wanted 8th place.
Right, if you wanted 8th place, but not if you wanted 1st place, right? And
we used to call that training for last. He's training for last place.
I love that, right? And so do we want to be average, or do we want to live up to our potential? And you guys being here tells me that you do. So the questions you want to ask yourself is, are you getting the most out of the hours you're working? A lot of us get caught up in the minutia of it. If you're new, right, you say, well, I really want to learn the process of the contract, so I don't want to pay the TC. And I would challenge you to use the TC from day one. You will still learn. They will still allow you the space to, be involved in the transaction. They're not going to just take it off your plate and run with it, right? They will if you want them to, but they will certainly help you learn the process as well. I'll be honest, if I had to open an escrow in SkySlope and put the paperwork in, I don't know how to do it. Don't know how to do it, have no intention of learning it, because it is worth the $350 to pay someone else to do it, because that is not my highest and best use of my time, right? And so when you look at the hours that you're working, really challenge yourself and saying, okay, what time am I getting up? What am I doing first thing? How am I spending my time? Am I wasting an hour on social media while I drink my coffee? Or am I, pumping myself up listening to a podcast or reading a book or learning something new, right? So really think about the hours that you're working. A lot of us, again, we get caught up in stuff that is not money-making activities. And then are you consistently at your highest and best use? And so what is highest and best use? That is focusing on money-making activities. It is making it rain, right? That is our number one job as real estate agents, is to prospect, right? And then the number two thing is to convert, right? And so we prospect and then we convert. Let me make sure am I recording this. I think I am. Sorry, I just had a thought there that I was, okay, I am, okay, good. We like to record these and push them out to the social media stuff. So the highest and best, right? And then number two is conversion, right? Once I get the lead, Jessica, what am I going to do with it now, right? What do I do with it? What do I say? How do I behave, right? So those are the next question is, do you know what your highest and best use of your time is? Which I just told you is prospecting and conversion, right? Those are the highest and most important things that we do, and they need to be done consistently. You could blow off today, like, you know what, I don't feel like prospecting today, I'm gonna skip it, right? That's okay, you can do that, but you're gonna feel the effect in 30 to 45 days from now, right? It doesn't affect your business today. And we also can't get lulled into complacency that, hey, I sold a house today, let me take a vacation. No, today's sales, not what feeds you tomorrow, right? And so we have to have, and we see that all the time with agents, right? They get busy prospecting, and then they're busy up here, they got some deals going, and then they close, and then they come back down here, oh crap, I don't have any more business, I better go prospect. And so throughout the year, you see these peaks and valleys. And it's even worse when they take vacation. I coach a team that a couple years ago, they had a really bad fourth quarter. And when we looked at their business, I said, well, what were you doing 30 to 45 days ago? And they had gone on vacation late July and never came back to work. They were on vacation for like 2 months. Right. And so it affected their fourth quarter. Right. And so we have to be really careful about that we don't get lulled into complacency if we've had a good quarter or a good month, and that, we get back to work after we take those days off. Right. And that, again, being consistent. So on page 4 of the materials, so the thing in here is, in the material in that second paragraph, is don't get offended by the word average. We're not implying that you're average when compared to others in the industry. We're suggesting that you may be average when compared to your potential. So what is our potential, right? And so many times, you guys, we base our goals and our future on what we've done in the past, instead of having that Roger Bannister moment. And you guys know who Roger Bannister is, right? He broke the mile record, right? Instead of having those moments of, what can I do? What is possible, right? What is somebody else doing that's mind-blowing? I attended the Workman 2-day leverage event last week, and they had been running a competition, the 120-day listing challenge, and they announced the top 3 winners. And when they announced the first lady, she had listed 53 houses in 120 days. And Tommy, I had that same reaction. I was like, wow, that's amazing, right? I don't remember what the second place winner was, but I do remember who won first place. She's a Remax agent. She listed 82 houses in 120 days. Right? So I went from 53 being shocked to mind freaking blown. How did she do that? Right? And so I'm hoping that they'll get her on a webinar. I've made a request that she'll share the actual how she did it. But think about that. We're all in this scarcity mindset that there's not enough inventory, right? We're all saying it every day. How is that really serving us? How is that script, instead of getting excited and looking at how many houses are on the market, how many opportunities are there, and flipping our thinking? 82 listings, you guys, in a no inventory market, in a pandemic, and an election year. So you think about that is a wow moment, right? And so what is possible? And so stop putting those limitations on yourself, and I think collectively as an industry, we need to stop talking about the low inventory and focus on the inventory that is there. Because in reality, if you look at the data year over year compared to 2019, more homes were listed and sold in 2020. So it wasn't that there wasn't inventory, it's just that you didn't have any of the inventory, right? And the truth is that stuff is selling so quickly that it doesn't have time to build up on the market, right? And coupled with the interest rate. So yes, more real estate sold. Is there low inventory? Yes and no, right? And so I think for us, let's shift our thinking and get out of that scarcity mindset and get into abundance. That there's X number of houses in the market. Let's go find one for the client that you're working, right? And so that was another thing that came out of leverage, was let's stop that story, right? Let's get into the abundance mindset. Okay. So getting clear, so your AMS, right? Activities Management System. So regardless of the numbers you dedicate, your goal is the same. And so when you think about a 16-ounce glass of water, right? It only holds 16 ounces, okay? So whatever the most out of those hours. And it was recently published in a book by Brennan Burchard, High Performance Habits, I think is the name of it. And he talks about that scientifically it's been proven, or medically it's been proven, that we need to work in 45-minute increments as adults, right? And at that 45-minute mark, you need to stop and take at least a 10-minute break. And he talked about doing stretching or calisthenics, doing something that moves your body. And it's actually been proven that by doing that, we give ourselves a fresh boost, right? If we take that break. And then, the mind doesn't work more than 45 minutes without needing a break, right? And so then I think, you reward yourself with something, the exercise, take a walk around your house, right? And then reward yourself with something that you enjoy, like watching a funny cat video, right? And then that 45-minute block, you stay intentional and focused, right? And then you have the break, And so that's the way to maximize your output, right? Is to really stay focused in that 45 minutes. And so let's see, in your materials, the glass can only be full or it can be fulfilling. It's in your hands. So are you a $25 million producer disguised as a $5 million producer? So as long as you're willing to dedicate the time, you might as well be have the best possible return and be effective and efficient as you possibly can be. All right, so money is not the key asset in life, time is. Do we agree with that? When my father-in-law passed away, it's gonna be 4 years this month, on the 14th. The one thing he said was that he wished he had more time. And he lived a very full life. I mean, he jumped out of planes, he blew up stuff on the Alaskan pipeline, he sold real estate. Like, he was a very well-rounded person who had a lot of good, a lot of life experience. And the one thing he said is he wished he had more time. So what does money do for time, right? It creates more time for us, right? As far as if we leverage it and we use it right. So time should be viewed as your most precious resource. And if you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And so if I'm spending time on fake work, then I'm saying no to something else. And worse, I'm saying no to the loved ones, right? I'm saying no to my family, to my friends, that I'm being taken away from and focusing on something that isn't the highest and best use of my time. So inefficient behavior always takes more time. My mother used to say that do it right, that it takes less time to do it right the first time than it does to half-ass it and have to go back and do it again, right? And so I often think about that in my head. So inefficient behavior takes more time. While many agents willingly dedicate 10 plus hours to their career a day, most only get a benefit of 6. So they're wasting 40% of their time. So why not be deliberate, spend 6 hours in your business and be able to go do the things that you love to do in the remainder of the day, right? And so for me personally, I like to get prospecting out of the way first thing. I want to get it done out of the way, get it, that way it's done, right? It's like, going to the gym first thing in the morning. If I wait, right, I may not get to the gym. And if I push it off to the end of the day, right? Let's see here, make sure I got my notes before I move on. Okay, so the next, this slide is really, really powerful. Because if you think about this number down here, the 2.4 million, I'm trying to find it in my materials. Where is it at? So think about this. So 1 hour a day over the course of a year is 240 hours. And you walk through the math, that could be 7,200 additional dials that I could be making to potential clients, which then is 1,080 additional talks, so additional opportunities, okay? 108 listing appointments, 72 additional listings taken, and a 48 more if only a small percentage of those sold. So not, looking at that. So 48 additional transactions. We break it down here, and this is not even our average per sales price, right? 240, we're over 300 in our average sales price. So in a 10-year period of time, that 1 hour could equate to $2.4 million. That's kind of like, I think this slide should really scratch all of our brains and be like, I think about how many hours I've wasted scrolling through social media or watching mindless TV, right? And so I'm missing $2.4 million in my life that I could really use, right? And be able to retire with. And so think about that when you think about your days and when you're spending time like that. Of course, you need to have downtime, right? There's absolutely time and space for having mindless TV, but it's after you've done the things that you need to do to protect and grow and develop your business, right? And I definitely don't want you guys to come away from this class thinking that, that it's all just work, right? Because we definitely do need to take time for ourselves and have self-care and, manage all of that and have downtime, okay? But it's after we hustle and get the stuff done we need to. All right. Okay, so this is on page 8 of your materials. So the typical agent, right? We have the typical agent up here who's spontaneous and reactive, has a scarcity mindset, discounts commissions, all those things, right? So we have choices. And so we think about a thriving salesperson and then a typical entrepreneur. The goal that we want you guys to have is to be a thriving entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs think differently than just a 1099 person, okay? They think leverage, they think about developing other opportunities. They don't put all their eggs in the same basket. They look for opportunities to grow and expand. They think about the people that are around them, right? And developing talent. And they think about, am I creating a sellable good? When I decide that this is it, I'm done selling real estate, I'm gonna go do something else, or it's time to retire, have I created something that has value, right? That someone would say, hey, Daniel, I will buy that from you, right? Because it has value. And so thinking in entrepreneur spirit, and I think, a few of you definitely have the entrepreneur spirit, right? Just from your past lives. And so thinking about what does that really look like? And entrepreneurs think about other opportunities. We've got several people within our business that have other businesses, right? That have taken opportunities to put money in different, like a winery, for example, one agent owns. Now she doesn't make the wine, but she owns the winery, right? And so there are other things that real estate can fund for you that are entrepreneur opportunities. So just, think about, we want to get you into that thriving, and thriving means that we don't have those peaks and valleys, right? In our business, it's consistent, and it's consistently on an upward trajectory, right? And so that's what it means to be a thriving entrepreneur. All right. Hold on a second. Let me look at my notes real quick here. Okay. All right. So this is going to be on page 9 of the materials. So we have the journey to abundance. Okay. So the success is a journey, not a destination. Success is a journey, not a destination. Okay. It is a journey. And again, getting up to that forward progress, right? So there are three and 1/3 components associated with each phase. Okay. So first phase is comfort. Second phase is mastery. Third phrase is freedom, right? Leverage. And so creating freedom in your business where you could go away, Tommy, and still make money. In 2019, Nate sold more houses, made more money, and traveled more than he ever had. And so how did he do it, right? He created leverage and he created freedom within his business. What do we got here in the chats? No worries, Lynette. Welcome back. Okay, so we look at this. So when you look at the materials, hold on, let me get my slide to go. We actually start at the bottom right here with the commitment. Am I committed to this success? Do I have the confidence, right? So taking classes and confidence, you guys, is the classes, it's practicing the scripts, but it also comes from just boots on the ground. And I often tell new people, 5-6 transactions in, you're going to feel like you got it all, right? Because those first few transactions, they're going to throw everything at you that you could possibly learn. Juan Acevedo, he's one of our agents. He had taken my classes when he came on board, and his first transaction, he was representing both buyer and seller, and it was a trailer. And so he had all kinds of challenges thrown at them, right? And so 5-6 transactions in, you're going to experience everything, and you're going to feel it will help to build your confidence, right? So then we have to be consistent, right? Consistent prospecting, consistent creating systems and following those processes. And then we start to create our beliefs, right? And then do we have the gazelle's endurance, right? Can we endure through all the different types of markets? I started in 1997 is when, 97? Yeah, when I got licensed, and I got licensed in 1996, I think, and then joined Nate's team in 97. So I've been around for a minute, right? And looking at the endurance of that, or I forget what I was going to say. Sorry, I jumped into that thought. So then going up here, being effective, right? Or that's what I was going to say. But we weathered a lot of storms, right? In 97, the market was great. There was plenty of houses on the market. Things were good. It was affordable. And then we went through the .com, the .bomb, 9/11, and then opening our own brokerage, and then of course the crazy uptick of the market, and then the crash. And so having the endurance to weather all those different market conditions, right? Effectiveness, and then efficiency. And so being not only being effective, but being efficient. A lot of times people are not efficient, right? And they're doing things that don't make sense in the business. And so again, I want you to think about McDonald's and the McDonald's University, right? And then that's next thing is mastering the systems. So it's one thing to come to this class and hear the material, but then it's another to take it back and master it, right? One of my favorite quotes about mastery was Bruce Lee. He said he did not fear a man who knew 10,000 kicks. He feared the man who had practiced one kick 10,000 times. And so creating that mastery, right? Studying the contract, going to classes, reading books, all those things. Okay. So then we jump up to the next chart here, which is moving from salesperson into the entrepreneur, right? So entrepreneur has patience because they know that they have to have patience in order to have endurance. And they also create not just effectiveness and efficiency, but proficiency and promotion. And then they recognize the need to develop people, right? To pour back into the community, back into the vendors. If you want to have a team, right? A team, you guys already all have a team. You got your title company, your mortgage company, your inspectors, your insurance agent, the transaction coordinators. Those are all part of your team already, right? And so how do we develop those relationships, and having a relationship with your title person that goes beyond just, hey, I'm opening a new escrow, right? And then we create leverage, right? So we start to have the beliefs, the system, and now the people. And so we start to create leverage, which is then really having that entrepreneur. And when we have leverage, we can take ourselves out of production, right? And we have everybody under us working for a common goal that creates that leverage. All right, so page 10 of the materials. So is your current production by design or coincidence? And so as new agents, sometimes we just kind of get stuff dropped in our laps, right? And it kind of feels like, luck or being at the right place at the right time. And so you have an opportunity to create a business by design, right? That doesn't rely on luck or coincidence, right? So the first thing is your operational model, which is on the top part of page 10. So step one is to analyze the model, right, to determine the resources and strategies. And as we move through momentum, we're going to talk more about this. Like we had the business planning class. We have conversion class coming up, got marketing classes. So everything in momentum is designed to support the stuff we talk about with the vital activities and the different models and things like that. Okay. So step 3 is distinguish between vital and irrelevant. We're going to talk about that more. So challenge every activity that you're doing. Should you be doing it? Is it vital? Is it money making? Can someone else do it? Think about how much time you spend on some of the personal activities. Like I don't have one right now because of COVID, but housekeeper, that's like a coveted thing in my world. I hate cleaning the house. It is not the highest and best use of my time. I have a bad back, right? And so for me to pay someone a couple $100 a month to come in and know that it's done is well worth it, right? You take Nate, for example. He has a laundry service that for $25 a bag, they come in, you stuff the bag as full as you possibly can. They pick it up, they take it, they clean it, they fold it, and they bring it back. I don't know about you, but $25 a bag to not have to mess with that, it's well worth it, right? So challenge all those things in your life. I coached a guy in he was in Michigan, or he was in Milwaukee actually. And he spent every other Saturday, spent half his day mowing his lawn. And so we were looking at where could we create more time in his life? And I said, well, why don't you outsource that? And it would have cost him $300 a month to have it done by somebody. And he's a real budget conscious guy. And he said, but it's not in the budget. Like that's $3,600 a year. That's not in the budget. And I said, so what you're just telling me is that 4 hours you spend that you could be spending with your daughter on the lake that is also in his backyard, jealous, on your boat, she's not worth $300 a month. He got kind of pissy with me. Because I made a point, right? And so really challenge those things. And I know that, some of you, if you're on a budget right now because you're new and you've got limited savings, that's okay. But think about in the future, how are ways that I can challenge this time I'm spending to free me up, number one, so that you have time to yourself, right? You can focus on the things you enjoy doing. And number 2, you can focus on growing your business. Okay. So record all your activities for I would say at least a week, 2 weeks, preferable. Really challenge and think, okay, where am I spending my time? Step 3 is distinguish between vital and irrelevant. Okay. We're going to talk more about that. And step 4 is to create your checklist, which you guys already have in the materials. So we're giving that to you. Okay. Steps 5 through 10 are mandatory, right? And then the additional steps are, if we look at the additional steps, there are more for if you want to grow a team. Okay. So step 6 is creating an organizational chart for the desired positions, assigning those duties to each position. and then finding and attracting talent, and then having your procedure manual so that everybody on the team knows what we're doing and how to do it, and then holding that talent accountable. So for most of you, you're in steps 1 through 5, right? So analyze it, right? What is the strategy of my business? And so when we talk about in the business plan, identifying your funnels, right? What are my funnels? And I think for most of you, your top 2 funnels are open houses and your sphere of influence, and really getting very diligent in maintaining and developing those relationships, right? Each one of you knows 50 people that you could call up and have a meaningful conversation about real estate, right? And don't get caught up because you're new. Don't get caught up in that headspace of, well, I'm new, I don't want to screw up and I don't want them to get mad at me. And here's the thing, they love you, they trust you, they know you're new, right? And so if you lead by your heart, you are among great company in this great company in Remax Professionals, right? I mean, you have resources available to you and people who will help you along the way. So you don't need to be in that headspace of, well, I'm new and I could screw up, right? Because you've got resources around you to prevent that from happening. Okay. So again, top 2 things, for your business as far as your strategy is your top 50 and I think again, open houses. Talk to Steve Cushing. Talk to Monique Reed. Those 2 people are they kill it with the open houses. And Steve his average sales price is $650. So I don't know about you guys, but that's a decent payday, right? And even being on a team with the split. And so he has a flow and a process. And I bet if you asked to shadow him, he would say yes, right? Just show up and be a fly on the wall and watch what he does. Same thing with Monique. It's they have and Rose Gillen's another one who just freaking kills it at open houses. And so, reach out to those people, pick their brain, find out what they're doing. Okay. As open houses work, and people are buying houses right now from open houses. I mean, Steve is killing it. So, okay. Let's move on to the next page. So page 11. So the 5 tools of intent. So we have the entrepreneur's mantra. So this reflects why you're doing it. And it's also about how much money you want to make, right? And it breaks down to the transactional benchmark. So I want to make 100 grand. That's about 14 or 15 houses in the Phoenix market that you have to sell. Okay. Not taking into account taxes and expenses and splits and all that stuff. Okay. Your economic model defines what must be done. Okay. So how many houses? Operational model defines how it will be done. So again, open houses, top 50, sphere of influence, social media. Operational model identifies, how it will get done. And the organizational model identifies who will do it, right? So that's you, the transaction coordinator, title, escrow, or mortgage, all of those. And then the activities management system defines when it will get done. And we're going to dive into that here in a couple slides of exactly what are the 94 activities. And then let's see. So let me make sure I've got this here. All right. All right, so time management is an oxymoron. When I first got into real estate, time management was the sexy buzzword, right? Everybody was like, "Ooh, you got to have good time management." And we've realized that you can't manage time, right? There's only 24 hours in a day, and we can't manage that. We can't change that, right? But what we can manage is how we choose to behave inside of those 24 hours that we're working, right? So having a time budget or time blocking, however you want to call it, is super, super critical. And there's only 4 things in real estate, as you can see on the slide, that would be categories that we should be focusing our time on. Number 1 and 2, I've already talked about these: lead gen and lead conversion, right? They are number 1 and 2 for a reason, because they are the most critical things that we need to be doing consistently, effectively, and proficiently, right? And so having those scripts and dialogues, having the plan, executing it flawlessly, right? And then client care, right? This is the part where we nurture. We have the escrow process, we have the home inspection process, we get them over the final hurdle of the closing line, right? And it's also the post-closing behavior as well, right? And maintaining that relationship. I think that the relationship starts at the closing table. Think about that. The longevity of the relationship. If the average client is worth $65,000 or more, the beginning of that relationship starts when you hand them the keys, because now you've got to maintain that relationship, right? And stay in contact with them, stay in flow with them, stay aware of what's happening in their life. Social media is great for prospecting in my mind, because if someone puts a post out there that says, this was a classic example, and some of you have heard me talk about this, but when school started last fall, one of my girlfriends, she has 6 kids, and I had this vision when the pandemic started, right? I was like, oh man, this Zoom room stuff is going to be reality for people with kids, right? And on first day of school, she posted this picture of all 6 of her kids around the kitchen table with their devices, first day of school. All right. And it was exactly what I had in my mind months prior, that this is the type of stuff we need to be looking for. Now, unfortunately, my friend has no money to buy a bigger house than they're currently living in, but they have 6 kids in a 3-bedroom, like 1,200 square foot house. I mean, it's crazy. Maybe it's 1,400, but they're on top of each other. She's got kids hanging on hooks, right? And so, if in a perfect world, if they had more money, they would be the type of client that is an exact example of, I need more room. Right, I'm putting up my hand in a passive way, but that is an opportunity to say, hey, should we talk about getting you a bigger house where you got some more space, right? At least some closets that you can stick kids in instead of everybody being around the kitchen table. And so look for those opportunities, because social media gives that to you. Same thing if someone says, we just found out we're pregnant, right? Do you need more space? Or our kids are going off to college. And so now in my mind, somebody in my top 50 that has 2 children that are college age, that could result in 4 transactions. How does that work? So Tommy, I would say both kids, instead of going and renting dorm space, let's get them into a kiddie condo program. Mom and dad co-sign. We buy a condo for them. If they're going to the same college, then we put them both in the same condo, right? Mom and dad don't even know about the kiddie condo program available, right? That could be an investment for them for the next 4 years while their kid's in college, and then they sell it, and that kid could use that down payment, the equity that they earned for a down payment on a house wherever when they're done with college, right? So that's another transaction that could happen in 4 years, right? Mom and dad no longer need the big house, so they decide to downsize. So that's your 3rd transaction, and they want to buy their next home, which is your 4th transaction. And so how do I create that type of a scenario? The only way to do that is to stay in flow with people and to be aware of what's happening. And social media is an outlet for that, right? It helps us to find out those details that we might not have otherwise known, right? Unless, of course, we were going old school, right? And using the phone to stay in contact with people, which I still advocate that you do, but you can certainly use social media to give you a leg up. Okay. So lastly, up here is personal development. So taking classes, masterminding, improving yourself and your skill. Those are all things that could be included in your time blocking. So those are the only 4 categories that lead to real estate sales revenue. Okay. And so when we think about anything outside of that, it's not defined as a money-making activity. Could be vital, but it's not necessarily defined. So creating a website, important, but does it have to be done by you? Or is that something that should be outsourced? Right? Think about that. And so, and all of you guys have your Remax websites too. So if you haven't met with Alex yet, get with Alex and get your website set up and get it customized to you, because you've got a beautiful website at your fingertips through Boosh. And so there's no reason to run out and get anything else. Use what you've got. Okay. So thinking about your time budget, right? So these are the 4 categories, and really thinking about how you're going to spend your time in those categories. I think new people, you should be prospecting a minimum of 3 hours a day. Okay, minimum. So maybe do that in 45-minute blocks, right? And on the weekends, that's an open house, right? You could do a 3-hour open house. That's your prospecting. And I think on open houses, we should be doing some canvassing, right, of the neighborhood, 10, 10, 20, right? 10 houses on either side and 20 across the street. If you're not comfortable door knocking, that's fine, but leave a flyer that says, hey, I'm doing an open house. I recently heard this script and I love it. Is it letting them know, hey, we're having an open house. There's going to be some extra traffic on the street today. Just wanted to let you know in case you were wondering what was going on. And oh, by the way, it's a great time to pick your neighbor if you want to, invite anybody who's looking in this neighborhood. So it's twofold, right? And educating them, and then the flyer has the price, so then you can tell them what the price is. So now we're educating them about the market value in that community. So a lot of opportunity, and to think about that. If you take a new listing and you canvas that 10, 10, 20 4 times, because there's an opportunity to do that, right? Coming soon. This house is going to be on the market. Think about anybody you might know that might want to move into the neighborhood. Open house. It goes under contract. So I let people know that it's sale pending and now it's closed. Welcome to the neighborhood, the new client, the new buyer, right? And oh, by the way, I sold this house for X price. So again, I'm educating them about the market. So if you think, Daniel, if you own a house and you come knocking on my door 4 times and I have any thought of selling my house at that moment, do you think that you're going to stand out?
100%.
Absolutely, right?
And
They're
most salespeople, I read in one of the it wasn't Zig Ziglar, but one of those sales books. 90% of salespeople never even follow up once, and only 1% will follow up more than 2 or 3 times. So if you follow up 4 times, you're in that top 0.11% of the billionaires.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And follow up in our industry is a huge, that's where OfferPad and Open Door, where they exploit us, because truth be told, we're terrible at follow up, right? We're absolutely terrible. And I'll even say it to myself, I got a Remax lead that I need to follow up with. And every day I'm like, I need to follow up. And it's just stupid, right? That I haven't done it. So yeah, and you have to follow up. And here's the thing that I want you guys to get imprinted on your DNA as new agents, is there are no bad leads. There are no bad leads, and they're never dead unless they're actually dead, like physically no longer breathing, expired as a human being. Okay. Misty Moffat shared with me recently that she was closing on a 600, I think it was like $695,000 on an internet lead that 2 years ago she received, who gave her a fake name. And because she consistently followed up, and here's the other thing, is he's also going to purchase a $350,000 condo for his daughter. And so because she consistently followed up for 2 freaking years, she over $1 million in real estate sales is going to happen. And so they're not dead, right? They're just, your internet leads, they start their process out 2 years in advance. Right. And think about your own buying activity on the internet, and how, you start thinking about buying something, and it's, you waffle. Like, we don't make big decisions typically overnight, right? There's a process there. And so, and we also get stuck in the, I need a lead today, and we don't think about the leads I need tomorrow or next month or 6 months or a year from now. And so when you start building a pipeline, that's when you can get out of bed and say, okay, I know who needs my services today. And so don't be afraid to build that pipeline of people that are out a few weeks or a few months. You got something you want to add, Tommy?
Yeah, as a new guy, I'm wondering if with the more experienced people, when you finally get a client and you're doing all that client work, do you tend to get tunnel vision on that?
Yeah.
And kind of leave the other things kind of by the wayside? Because I've noticed with myself,
Yep.
I get
Absolutely.
so honed in on the client or the 2 clients that I haven't been doing my homework in the other areas. So I wonder if that's a common thing or not.
It is common. It is common. And I don't know if Lynette, if you can chime in on that at all. But yeah, that is absolutely common. And, and that's the part of the problem with this, right? With the peaks and valleys, because I get tunnel vision. And I think, as a new agent, that's probably okay that that's happening to you right now, but you definitely don't want it to be a habit that you keep, in the future, because it will affect your business. And that's when we see those peaks and valleys, because we're so focused on the lead we have today that we stop prospecting. And so get into a good habit of still prospecting, no matter how many leads you have on your plate right now, right? And so, and for once you get going, you're new, right? 3 hours, and then once you get going and you've got some stuff in the pipeline working, then cut back to an hour. It's really, if you think about that, and I've been advocating, this came up in a coaching call last month, is five contacts a day. This is old school, right? And I remember doing this when I was coaching with Brian Buffini. 5 contacts a day, and then if it was 5 note cards, that was it, right? 5 note cards a day. So it was a goal of doing 25 a week, right? And I will tell you, my early success, I attribute a lot to those written note cards, right? Because a written note card goes a long way. And so here's the thing: if I make 5 contacts, and then let's say I talk to them, I follow up with a text. It was so great chatting with you today, Jess. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you, right? Then I follow up with a note card that says this kind of the same thing. And then the, oh, by the way, is a momentum script that says that the average person will know 5 people who will make a move in the next 12 months. I'd love to be top of mind when you hear of those folks. Here's 5 of my business cards. And so we've just made 3 contacts to that one person, right? 3 touches to that one person, and asked for the referral. And so if you did that every day for, and it'd probably take you about an hour, because you are going to reach some people, right? But if you did that every day consistently, do you think it would make an impact on your future? Absolutely. Right. And that doesn't seem overwhelming. I'm not asking you to make 100 robocalls, right? It's just 5 people that you already know and like, and that know and like you. And then we follow up with that. And, we do the written note card. So to me, I think that's the easiest thing to do that will create momentum in your business. All right. So let's move to our next slide. Okay, so the AMS procedures, so this is going to be on page 13. So most people get ahead during the time others are wasting. Staying intentional and proactive is the ultimate key to your success. So the best way to break unproductive role habits and become vital is on a daily basis is to account for every hour that you're investing in your career. So prioritize and stay proactive, right? And so we see here, step one is to define how many hours you want to work in a week. Okay, all of you, everybody's new. I mean, Lynette, you're not new, but you're new kind of to the Phoenix market, and so define what that looks like, right? And then define the hours for the day. Identify the vital blocks in your planner. So when am I going to prospect? When am I going to leave time for client care? When am I going to do open houses? And so, you know, being intentional in creating that. Again, I like to prospect first thing in the morning and get it out of the way so I know it's done, right? And then record those specific activities and then stay engaged for the entire block. So turn off your cell phone notifications, right? That dinger goes off and it's like crack. We want to see what it is, who texted us, what's the Facebook message, you know, turn it off, right? Or turn it to vibrate. So, well, vibrate doesn't work either because it's still going to notify you. So just, you know, for 45 minutes, nothing in the world is going to happen that you need to be distracted, right? And so commit to that, turn it off. If you have the bad habit of looking at Facebook first thing in the morning because your cell phone's also your alarm clock, turn off the notifications or get an old school alarm clock by the side of your bed, right? And don't use your phone. They do still sell those at Walmart or Target. So stay engaged, right? And then refer back to your checklist. And then at the end, assess the progress for the day, right? Reflect, revise, and release. If you're prospecting, I always suggest that end on a high note, because if you end your prospecting time on someone telling you that realtors suck, when it's time to prospect again tomorrow, you're not going to feel inspired to do that. So even if it's just leaving a voicemail, try to end your prospecting on something positive so that you feel engaged to do it the next time. Okay. And then let it go. So reflect, what did I do right? What could I do better? And then let it go, right? Play the Frozen song if you need to, because tomorrow's a new day, right? And then we're going to repeat it, right? Steps 2 through 7 every single day, right? And getting into that space. Now, for some of you, thinking about doing prospecting every single day at the same time might be very restrictive. It might feel like you're trying to put yourself in a cage. And so that's okay if that doesn't work for you, but plan ahead. On Sunday afternoon, look at your week and say, okay, here on Monday, I'm doing it here. Tuesday, I'm doing it this time. Wednesday, I'm going to do it this time, so that you're planning ahead and setting yourself up for success. Because if you don't put it in your calendar when you're going to do it, it's not going to get done, because we live by our calendars, right? And if it's not my calendar, it doesn't exist. And so definitely if having it be set at the same time every day is too restrictive, then be a little bit fluid with it, but commit to putting it in your calendar for every single day of the week. Okay. All right, let me make sure here. Okay, so the note at the bottom, that the mistake most people make is attempting to manage time and not activities. You can't manage time, right? But we can manage our activities. All right, so here's an example up here of proactive and intentional time blocking. And so you can see here lead gen, right? And then client care, other admin follow-up, lunchtime rejuvenate, and then we have lead gen, lead conversion down here, and then other follow-up stuff. So I think, you know, start your day out. If you're going to work out or you have your miracle hour that you're working on, put that in there too. You want to put in, you know, other big rocks as well. So what, you know, Tommy, date night, right? That might be important to you. You know, time with your family, time with your grandkids, you know, time for whatever other things. We want to put it in here because we don't want to just be one dimensional. And that can happen very quickly and easily with real estate because it is all encompassing. It goes with you everywhere, right? And now with cell phones, when I first started selling real estate, we literally had to go to the office because the MLS was a 6-inch binder, 6-inch ring binder that sat at the front desk that every day the board would fax in new listings and price changes and status changes. So you literally had to go to the office to search the MLS, right? Nowadays, we can search right from our phone. And so our phone, and that was only 24 years ago. So imagine, I mean, we've come a long way with technology, right? And so, so it goes with you everywhere. And that's the slippery slope. It's a convenience, but it's a slippery slope because, you know, it has breakfast with you, it showers with you, it goes on vacation with you, it's there all the time. And so you have to build in those other big rocks so that you're not one dimensional and just all about real estate. Okay. So we take the time now. This is a high level of accountability, and for some of you it will be very challenging. And so one of the keys, Nate this is not a new concept, right? It's been around for a long time, but Nate really started working it about 5 years ago, and he'll tell you it's a magic pill. And now what he's done is not only does he have his calendar printed out and everywhere people can see it, he also has a Google overlay in his calendar. So it shows up on his Google Calendar and says, hey, from this time to this time, you're supposed to be doing this. Now he can schedule over it if he chooses to, but what happened is it started to have a shift for him that it was kind of like that nagging voice that sits there on your shoulder, and you shouldn't be scheduling it there, you shouldn't schedule it there. And then eventually it became a habit where Fridays he golfs, right? That's what he does on Fridays. And so and he doesn't go on listing appointments after 6 o'clock, and everybody on his team knows that, and it's just a process. And so it's a high level of accountability, and it takes a commitment to really work the plan. But create it, sit with it, work it, identify what those big rocks are, and then you can always make changes. Okay. All right. So focusing on the right activities. So time blocking is worthless unless you're implementing the right activities. And so if you don't, we have to fully commit, right, to accounting for each hour. So tracking that. And again, high level of accountability. But if you've ever been on a diet, the one thing that they do is they have you keep a food log, right? You got to write down everything that you eat. And it's not fun. It's not a fun process to do, but it raises your awareness, right, of what you are eating or what you're not eating, right? How much water. I'm a stickler for getting my 64 ounces of water in. So I use something that is easy to track. So it's 20 ounces. I know that I have to drink 4 of these every day, right? And I'm militant about it because it's important to me, and I don't feel good if I don't drink enough water. And so but that's a process that I track, right? And so think about those things in your business, right? Am I really accounting for that? And then be honest about it. All right, so in our materials, we're going to jump in. Any comments or questions before I move on to what our vital activities actually are? Speaking of water. All right. So lead gen. So what is lead gen? So if you look at page 16, so this is for listings. So we're talking about what are all the vital activities around taking a listing. So obviously, first thing is finding them, right? We got to find people who want to sell their house, whether that's face-to-face or Zoom to Zoom. Don't be afraid to jump on Zoom. I'll tell you, I did a listing presentation on Zoom, and it was a buyer/listing. It was so freaking convenient because one lady was in Scottsdale, one was in Peoria, I'm in Surprise. And so it would have taken all of us 45 minutes to get to the office, and it was just so freaking convenient, right? And even they said that. We're like, this is great, right? Now, I still had to go to the house. You can't list the house without touring it, but we could do all the initial conversations via Zoom. So don't be afraid to jump on Zoom. And most people have a Zoom account, right? If that's one thing the pandemic's done, is I would love to own stock in Zoom, right? So talk about opportunity and growth right there with that company. And so don't be afraid to use use your Zoom account. Phone calls, mail, email, text message, Facebook Messenger. I will tell you, I've tested this over and over again, and I get a 100% response rate when I use I use Facebook Messenger versus text. I'm probably about an 80% response rate. And so be where people are. The great Wayne Gretzky said that he skated to where the puck was going, not where it had been. And so be where people are. Even if they're not necessarily active on Facebook, they're using Messenger. Okay. Think about it. You can send money, you can do all kinds of things. You can send photos and video. I mean, it trumps regular text message. Okay. And to me, as long as you are engaging in a meaningful conversation via Facebook Messenger, it counts as prospecting. Now it can't be, hey, cute new puppy. It's got to be a meaningful conversation about real estate. It can start with, hey, cute puppy, right? Because you want to lead in, you don't want to pounce on them and be like, hey, you want to buy or sell a house, right? But you do the stalking and find out, hey, cute puppy. And that I'm thinking of someone I actually used this with. She got a new dog, and that was my lead in. Oh my gosh, I love puppy kisses. And then where did the conversation go? It immediately went to, how are you? How's the real estate market? How's the pandemic affecting that, right? I didn't even have to bring it up. She brought it up. And so use the Facebook Messenger, use the stalking piece of it to find a way in that opens that conversation. Okay. For sell by owners and expired listings, a lot of opportunity with these two. And I get it that people, for sell by owners can be challenging, right? But don't necessarily go in thinking I want to list the house, right? Go in that you want to help them sell the house to a buyer that you have, right? Expired listings, even though our market is hot, 25% of the market still fails to sell every single year. And so go look at the expired listings. There's opportunity there. Go back a year or 2 or 3 and look at the expired listings, because those people they had their hand up at one point. Do they still have an interest? And they're not as pissed off as the guy who expired this week, right? So you could go back a couple years and look at that inventory. Traditional and social networks, right? Your sphere of influence, and then just sold postcards, just listed postcards, open houses, canvassing the neighborhood. That stuff does work. Next week, we're going to talk about farming and how to create an effective farm and what your marketing plan should be. Okay, so that's our next class. Lead conversion. So asking pre-listing questions. So before I ever go to the appointment, gathering all the information, being the investigator. You're going to get a form inside of the listing conversion class that asks those questions, right? Because I mean, we want to give you something that you can actually use, right? That this is what you can implement today to start asking those questions. Pricing. We have a class on pricing, but I would encourage you guys, whatever tool you're going to use for pricing, that you become a master at it. That is probably one of the most important things we do as real estate agents, is understanding the market and understanding why a house sold or didn't sell. Okay. And really getting into that, understanding what were the amenities and features of that house that caused it to sell for the price that it sold, and just being a master at that, really studying it. I would encourage you to take a property now, find something in MLS, do your own comps, and start practicing on that, and then pay attention when it closes, how close you were to what that price was. Okay. And then beyond that, it's not just assembling the pricing tools, but it's being able to deliver that information to the seller that allows them to take accountability for how they price the home. The 25% of homes that fail to sell are typically, it's price and condition, right? They're overpriced and they may have a condition issue, right? And so, or they have a condition issue and it's price, right? And so now it's delivering that information and being honest with the seller so that they can make an informed and intelligent decision. Confirm the appointment. Every other industry except for realtors confirms the appointment, right? So confirm, because if there's two people involved in making the decision to sell that house, you don't want to deliver your message to just one. You want to make sure you're in front of both of them. And so, reschedule it if somebody becomes unavailable, if you can. So confirm the appointment. Life happens, people forget things, technology happens. I have an appointment scheduled this week and my phone didn't save it. And so now I got to go back and find out when it is, right? So, because again, if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist. I think I need to get a new phone because this isn't the first time it's happened. So then preparing the listing agreement, right? We can do that in zip forms, or whatever transaction desk, whatever you're using. You can prepare that ahead of time. And then, that's a closing technique, right? If you have the paperwork ready when you go to the appointment, that's a way to convert, right? To make it easy for them. Getting on the listing channel. So this is your mindset, right? I knew an agent that would go to the neighborhood, he would drive around, he would preview everything that was for sale around that house if he could, and then he'd go to a local coffee shop and he would study his comps, and he would just really get into the vibe of the neighborhood, right? And I love that idea. It was a little bit of a time suck because he said he would spend about 2 hours doing it, but he had a really good conversion rate because he had the vibe of the community, and that was transcended to the client, right? And so getting your mindset right, visualizing the outcome that I want these people to list their house with me, right? And so really preparing that. If that's listening to the Rocky theme song, I don't care, right? Get your mindset in the right space that you're going to go in there and you're going to nail it. Okay. Arriving on time. I cannot stress how important arriving on time is to the client, right? It demonstrates a lot of things. If you're late, it demonstrates that you are not organized, right? That you can't manage your own time and that you don't respect their time. And so, people who are fashionably late to the party, not always a good thing. So if that's something you struggle with, and I don't think it is because all y'all were logged on minutes before 9 o'clock. So I think most of you get it. But if that's something you struggle with, you gotta overcome it, because even if I'm going to be 30 seconds late. And I was raised where if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late, right? And so I've spent a lot of time in my car burning the 10 minutes. And so now I've gotten to where I'm extremely punctual, right? But arriving on time is super professional. You need to make sure you're doing that. If you're going to be late, even if it's 30 seconds, let them know. Okay. Because when you're dealing with your high C personalities, which is your very analytical and cautious people, they are looking for ways to not trust you. And so if you're late, that's check number one, right? I can't trust that they're going to manage time. All right. So having the conversation, right? We don't, in Momentum, we don't talk about listing presentations. We talk about listing conversations, because no matter what skill set you have in this industry, you can have a meaningful conversation with someone about helping them sell their home. A presentation is what I'm doing, and that might cost some of you some, heart palpitations and some beads of sweat because you're nervous. And so if we can remove that obstacle of having a presentation, yes, you want to have a tool that is, your PowerPoint that talks about all the wonderful things you're going to do and the brand and all of that, but we could still, beyond that, you could still have a conversation with someone and just use your PowerPoint as a tool, as a guide, okay? Which all of you guys have access to. As new agents, you don't need to have that be a stumbling block. If you go into the Mac Center and go into Design Center, type in listing presentation in the search, you'll get several options in there that you can download and customize to yourself, and it's all branded to Remax, okay? If you're using the Toolkit CMA, there's also a presentation in there as well that's heavily branded to Remax. So you do have some options. Don't let that be a stumbling block for you as a new agent, okay? All right, so listing conversation, going back to that, set the tone, right, for a win-win. What's a win for you and what's a win for them? Uncover their needs, right? What are their needs? Most of the time that shows up in time and money. Those are the two things. How much money am I going to make and how long is it going to take? And so we have Open Door and OfferPad that are capitalizing on the time thing, right, and the convenience, but scalping people on cost, right? Because it costs more money to sell your house with those companies. So uncovering their needs, if they need to be somewhere in a certain amount of time, they're purchasing something else, really understanding that, and then helping them to prioritize those needs. I have a great story about a guy named Jason that he's a big Dave Ramsey guy, and I had sold him a house in Tempe, and then now they were moving back to Utah, and they had lived in the house. They had 2 or 3 cats, 2 dogs, and a toddler. And so I suggested that we move the wife and the kids and the animals, go ahead, get her up to Utah and settled. And then he had to stay here to finish out his contract with work. And he was excited. He was like, great, I haven't been a bachelor since I got married and haven't been away from the kids. I can sit in my underwear and drink beer and play video games. So, and I decided I was going to list the house for $5,000 more than what we had initially talked about, because there was nothing on the market, cute little 3-bedroom on a corner with a pool, easy peasy, right? And he every day he's checking Zillow, right? He's just fascinated. Of course, being a Dave Ramsey guy, the $5,000 was very enticing to him. Well, fast forward a week, just 1 week. Here's the same dude who's jacked up, excited about making $5,000 more than he thought, was going to play video games in his underwear and drink beer while his wife was gone for the next 30 days, was an emotional wreck. I need to get back to my family. I hate this. Drop the price. The price is no longer important to me. I just need to sell this house. And so helping him, I love that story because it's a real life story of how we uncovered the needs and we prioritized those, but in 7 days, the needs changed. Right. And so we did end up selling it, that weekend, and for the price we wanted to get for it. But it's a great example of how that in real life, those needs can change, and we need to be paying attention to that. Okay. So then transitioning into the pricing tools. So again, presenting that to them in a way that they can follow along with you and take responsibility. We want them to take accountability for how they price it. Reviewing that stuff and then agreeing on what's an appropriate price entry point. So where are we coming into the market? If we come into the market too high, we will miss those critical first days on the market when the activity is the highest, right? And as a home sits on the market, it starts to appear to the consumer that, 1, the seller is difficult, and 2, that there's something wrong with the property. And so we want to be able to explain that to them so that we protect the client. And then one of my favorite things in the conversion classes for Momentum are the roles. So you guys are going to get this when we get to those classes. They're reviewing my role as your realtor and their role as the client. And it's absolutely brilliant. It's a fantastic tool that, again, you get because of Momentum. And to me, it really separates you from your competition. So hopefully you guys will implement that when you get to that class. Agreeing on the roles, right? What is our expectation of each other? Because that's usually, right, that's when challenges happen, is when we have an expectation that has not been verbalized, right, or communicated. And then agreeing on those roles, closing for the listing agreement, getting all the paperwork signed, explaining that stuff, right? And I love digital signatures for the ease of them, but I also think that it's a slippery slope that we just send things to people to sign and they don't really know what they're signing. So make sure you're taking the time to explain the contracts before you zip them off to them on zip forms. Okay. Reviewing a staging plan. When I first started selling real estate, a CMA online, like, the internet was just becoming a thing, right? And I remember Nate's website had this like goofy song that played on it, and the weird little intro. You guys remember these, right? Way back in the day on the internet. And so, but it was cool. It was the coolest thing, and you could get a CMA online, right? And that was like the sexy thing. Well, does the consumer even know what CMA stands for? Adrian, do you know what CMA stands for? And so, think about the things that we're offering, right? Make sure it's clear and that it's still sexy and relevant. And I think having a staging plan is something that kind of trumps the CMA these days, right? And so talking to them about that, homes that have been staged, there's proof through data that those homes actually sell for more money. And so, maybe read a book on staging so you can have some tips and things. There is the staging association does have a group type thing that you can do, and it's like a flat fee to have them come in and do a staging consultation. So that's something you could think about offering in your marketing package as well. All right. So next thing up here is administration process. So measuring the rooms and having a complete MLS sheet. We are supposed to fill out every box that is applicable in the MLS. So don't get lazy with that. And room measurements, if you think about it, if you bust out a digital measuring tape that you can buy at Weimar or you can buy on Amazon, think about that. And if your seller is holding a clipboard, and you hand that to them and say, hey, Tommy, will you write down the measurements, and you whip out a digital thing that shoots a red laser beam across the room, are you going to look cool? Yeah, absolutely, right? They're going to be impressed with that. Plus, the act of having them write down the room measurements is a closing technique. And so by engaging them in that process, it's a closing technique. Okay.
That's actually how I got that client from Anu at the open house.
Oh, really?
The lady walked in and she says, listen, I have a humongous couch and I'm not getting rid of it. I need to know if it's going to fit in here. So I broke out the tape measure, and I think she liked that. It was pretty cool. That was the connection between me and Fawn and her, was that room measurement. Like, I guess she thought, wow, tape measure, pretty cool. So you're right. Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. So yeah, so it was a way to connect with her, right? And it was something different that probably nobody else had offered to do when she was looking at open houses.
I think it makes the client seem like, hey, this person really cares about me a little bit, want to go the extra mile. So
yeah, I love that. Yeah, you can buy those. You can either at Weimar or you can buy it on Amazon, and they're the electronic tapes. And it's a great example of a couch, right? I mean, when I remember having a client that had inherited furniture and they needed a master bedroom that fit a certain size, and so before she would even look, we'd look in the MLS, and if it didn't have it in MLS, she didn't want to look at the house, right? And so then we had to start like actually going and measuring rooms, because people weren't filling out the information in MLS. So make sure you're not missing that, right? Because that's something that separates you from your competition. Interior and exterior photos. Arizona Imaging is one of our preferred vendors. For $100, you get a professional package. We've been working with Kevin and Melanie since the dawn of time, since their existence. They're amazing. You get a full package. They give you a virtual tour, and they push it out to all the different major websites out there. For $100, it's well worth it, unless the house is not photo quality. But even then, I mean, most houses are, right? And so we want to make sure that you're not that agent who's taken the selfie with the toilet seat up in the bathroom, right? I've seen it more than once. And so it's for $100 to represent the house online and to get professional photography. It's just a baseline of doing business, in my opinion. So don't shortcut that and think, well, I'm an amateur, or I have the new Apple phone. Pay to have it done professionally, okay? Because your clients deserve that.
Well, the difference between a pro photographer and somebody that takes snaps with their phone is that photographer has an eye for detail, and we are agents, not pro photographers here. It's a huge difference. That's why you hire a pro photographer for your wedding, because selfies aren't good enough for a wedding.
Yeah, there's no do-overs for photos, right, on a wedding.
So. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So that's the one thing. Don't shortcut that. And depending on the listing, right? If it's a quality listing, a luxury, you might consider doing some drone photography, or Nate does night shots on his stuff. So depending on where it's at and the price point, you might, it might deserve something a little bit more. Okay. Placing a sign and lockbox, super important. The signage, you guys, part of our rules say that we will expose the home as best that we possibly can. And how better than just putting out a sign, right? The sign is important. I know agents out there that don't do it. And I think that that's ridiculous, because you're missing out, right? You're missing out on getting leads that would be yours from taking that listing, right? By not having a sign. And I think I'm going to stop here for a second and go on down a rabbit hole of something that's come up in coaching in the last month, is that, Workman advocates that for every listing we have, we should get 6 to 8 leads, and that should correlate to 1.5 buy sides. And so if you think about how many listings you have, what has happened, because everybody tells me we're not doing that. That doesn't happen, right? Well, what I recently discovered, the reason it's not happening is because homes are selling so quickly that we've gotten lazy and we're not marketing. We're not canvassing the neighborhoods. We're not doing just listed postcards. We're not doing the open houses, right? And so we're shooting ourselves in our own foot when it comes to lead gen on the listings we are taking. And so one of the things that I'm advocating for clients to do is, if you have a new listing, do a coming soon for a few days, right? Put it on the market for coming soon. You're collecting interest. Then we go live on Thursday or Friday. We have an open house Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday. We put it in MLS that we're not responding to any offers until Monday, right? And now we've had an opportunity to expose that property. We canvas for the coming soon. We canvas for the open house, right? And then if we want to do some just listed stuff, we push it out on Megaphone, which is a tool you guys have as agents. We put it on our social media. We do the Facebook Live or the Facebook video. And now we've created a buzz around this new listing, right? And then that should result in getting those leads. Okay. So don't be that agent that's shortcutting and not marketing because the market's hot, right? Because you're screwing yourself out of your own leads, right? And I know it costs money, and that's part of the reason why agents aren't doing it. It's like, I don't have to spend the money. I don't have to, but I think you do, because you're not generating the leads that we need to be generating off of our own signs. Okay. All right. So going back to the materials, thank you for indulging my rabbit hole there. Mail a thank you letter to them. Send them a thank you note that says, I can't wait to work with you. It was a pleasure meeting with you, et cetera, et cetera. And I think in one of the classes, we give you some examples of those. Creating your file, right? Working with the TC to create the file and what we need for the broker stuff. Using the showing time, which is a fantastic tool that we all have to set up showings. Make sure you explain that to the client, how it works. They get the text and the phone call and how they can schedule that stuff. And then delivering the listing agreement, the MLS sheet, and the notices. Make sure you send the MLS sheet to the client to review before we get too far down the process, because we don't want to have a mistake in there or something that they don't like. So you want to make sure you get their approval on that. Okay. And you only have a small window of time to make changes before it gets sent out to all those thousands of websites out there. So you want to make sure your photos, your description, all of that stuff is done properly. Okay. And then put it into your database, your follow-up system. I don't care if you're using Booge. If you're new, you should be using Booge or whatever CRM you are using. That's your client management tool. And then the loan payoff. So I gathered this information in my intake call, is I want to know, number one, how much do they owe? Number two, do they have a second mortgage? Because if they have a second mortgage, my conversation might be a little bit different than if they just have one mortgage, right? Because they might be upside down, okay, on that. And there's still some people out there, not very many, but there are still some people out there that are upside down in their mortgages. And then the other thing I'm going to do with that loan payoff is I actually prepare 3 cost sheets. Is typically I have a window, right? Let's say 300 to 325. And so top end of the market, 325, low end is 300. And let's say that I want that client to list at 315. So I'm going to run a cost sheet at 300, 315, and 325. And I'm going to build in the home warranty, and I'm going to build in buyer concessions. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's very common that we see buyer concessions. It's kind of shifting these days with the competition the way that it is. But I would rather explain that to them in the listing appointment than wait till we get a contract and then have to explain it to them, because now I'm taking money out of their pocket. So, but if I address it up front on my cost sheet, they see the net with it built in. Okay. And we have the conversation. I also have them initial the loan payoff, because they're not going to, usually when my cost sheets are off, it's because the loan payoff was off. And so I want to make sure that they verify that, and they're not going to initial it unless they verify it. So I always have them initial that. Oops, go away. Sorry about that. So I have them initial that. Now, the cool thing is when I get a contract, and let's say that I have a contract that doesn't have concessions in it, I get to put that money back in their pocket, and that makes them very happy, right? And so there's a lot of psychology around doing that. Plus, it's professional that they know the net that they're going to get. That's, you know, again, two things people want: time and money. So if I don't tell them up front how much money they're possibly going to make, then I'm failing them as an agent, right? And so plus it's also a closing technique that I want to get them to list at 315. So as we go through the process, and I will tell you, 9 times out of 10, it works like clockwork. And they're the ones that say, you know, Tommy, I think we should list it at 315. Great. That's what I was thinking too. And so now that I've allowed them to take accountability for that, right? And I've addressed all those things up front so that I'm explaining what they can expect to happen. Okay. So don't be afraid to ask for that loan payoff. Next thing is marketing and exposure. And so we're going to put it in the MLS, right? We're going to put it in the MLS. We're going to make sure we have good photos, good directions. That is also important. I know most of us have GPS in our cars, but when you're navigating, showing 5, 6 houses and the directions are wrong, it's very stressful. Okay. And if they're in a car following you, it's even more stressful because now you got to navigate traffic lights and other stuff, right? So I remember showing a client one time, I think it was, I don't even remember the source of it, and the directions were wrong. And he made some comment to me about not being able to find the house. And it threw me off my game because, you know, he was basically implying that I was not a good realtor. And so, you know, I came up with something tongue in cheek about taking the scenic route or something, but, you know, so that's important because it does cause stress. So have good directions. Okay. Have a good write-up. Those write-ups are searchable content on the internet. And so don't use all caps because that is yelling. Try to avoid your ampersands and like symbols and stuff because those don't always syndicate properly to your other websites out there. And then I'd like to include the number of bedrooms, the school district, if it's a popular school district, the subdivision name, because those are all searchable things. So a 4-bedroom house in Arrowhead Ranch in Arrowhead Elementary School, that is all searchable content. And so when people are looking to find my house, I want them to be able to see that. And the MLS is the storyboard, right? That description is the storyboard that tells people what life would be like living in this house. And so get kind of in that creative juices, if you will, and include those things in there in the write-up, okay? Look, so you're just listed phone calls and canvassing. If you're gonna solicit on the phone, make sure you're following the do not call rules, right? I'm about to put my phone on a do not call because I have every donation and charity thing calling me from all over the place. And I've asked them to take me off and they still keep calling me, but it might be different ones. I don't know, but it's driving me crazy. So, and I'm a real estate agent. I need to answer my phone and now I don't even want to answer it, right? Oh, and just so you guys know, there is a scam going on with APS right now. They are calling from APS's phone number and telling you that your account is, you know, you need to pay your bill, and it's a scam. So be careful of that because they're calling from APS's phone number. So I just found that out yesterday. So, so make sure you're following the do not call rules, right? But how about just door knocking and canvassing the neighborhood with the flyer? Okay. You get also within Design Center on Mac Center within about, I don't know, 12 hours or so, sometimes shorter than that, you get an email from Design Center with some marketing stuff. So you get a postcard. You get a link that can be pushed out on social media. You get a YouTube link that you can create a YouTube video that's just basically all your photos put onto music. And then you get a flyer. And so all those things come to you. Now, the thing about that is it's going to populate your first, I think, 5 to 10 photos. So make sure you're using your money shot photos and those first ones that you load up to MLS so that you don't have to make edits on your flyer and your postcards. Okay. There's also a website you guys should all bookmark. Is called remaxhustle.com. In there, you can create marketing videos for your listings. You can create custom content in there. Plus, all of the national ad campaigns that are going on right now can be branded to you. So there's a lot of great content on remaxhustle.com. So again, phone calls to the neighbors, door knocking, just listed postcards, sending the flyer out to agents in the area, soliciting feedback. That is super important. And showing time helps with that. You get a reminder when you show a property to give feedback. And if you are the agent showing the house, give feedback, but don't just give feedback, try to give tangible feedback. If you think the house is overpriced, by how much? If you think it has a condition issue, then say what the condition issue is. It needs new carpet. It needs paint. It needs whatever, right? Because when a seller is looking at feedback, just to say it's overpriced, great. That does me no good. it's overpriced by X amount, right? Or if you did this, then maybe you could get this price. And so try to give tangible feedback, and meaning that it's something the seller could take action on to correct, to get the home sold. Okay. Because when you're the listing agent, that feedback is super critical for your seller, right? Because the seller, think about when you show, if you've ever sold a house, right? The house we sold in Prescott was like, we had 7 showings in 24 hours, and it was like seven speed dates, right? That we went on. And so think about that for a client. It's like going on a blind date, right? And if you've ever been on a blind date, you do fast forward and pick out China and think about your wedding, right? Before you even meet the person. And so it was the same thing when we show a house, right? So they need that feedback. Okay. Preparing weekly updates. You can pull, and I don't think it's going to be high. I don't know what Zillow's future looks like now that Zillow is open brick and mortar. I don't know that they're going to be the same source of, because they've been taken out of MLS too, so you can't even syndicate anymore into Zillow. So, but preparing you guys in MLS, you can pull a report that shows how many times that home has been viewed, searched, saved, or blocked, removed from a search, and that's really good intel to give to your seller. Okay. Weekly updates. When we sold my father-in-law's trailer in Wickenburg, we had to use, it was in a mobile home park, so we had to use the real estate company that was there, and they were awful. 30 days, we had 30-day window to sell this trailer, and they never once called with any kind of feedback, any updates on how many showings we had. And I had to call them every week and request a price reduction because we were on a very short window of time. And about 3 weeks into it, they seemed a little annoyed with me because I would call every Friday. How many showings have we had? What's been the feedback? Okay, let's drop the price. And they seemed a little annoyed with me. But what happened for me is that it confirmed something that has been a core value in my business, is that I want to beat my client to making the phone call. If they call me first, I have failed them in my communication. And so having that experience selling Rumpel's trailer really affirmed for me that that core value is part of my success in real estate, and the experience my clients have working with me. Because if I call them first, then they feel like I'm taking care of them. I have good communication, right? All of those things, all those warm and fuzzy feelings. And literally I get a knot in my stomach if they call me first, because I'm like, damn it, I let them down. And so, be mindful of, you can never over communicate, right, in real estate. Okay. So following up, and even if there's been no showings, even if you have nothing, that's it, right? That's the update. I have nothing, right? But it's this, it's checking in on them, making sure that they're doing okay emotionally. Okay. All right. Next up is going to be presenting and negotiating. So proactively soliciting multiple offers, presenting those offers and counter offers to the client, changing the status. If you've got multiple offers, change the status in MLS and say that you have multiple offers. It sucks to be showing a house and find out that it's under contract or has, multiple offers. Okay. So change the status, and then deliver the accepted contract. All parties need to have that fully executed contract. You need to make sure that they get that. Okay. Negotiating the repairs, and then following up to make sure that the appropriate documentation for receipts and repairs and invoices and things have been received. All right, next is going to be our closing prep. So communicating throughout with all parties. There's nothing worse, and Lynette can attest to this, there's nothing worse than having the cross agent go MIA or the loan officer go MIA. It's the worst, right? And so just, over communicate, even if there's something going on. You got an issue with something, right? You got to communicate that stuff. Okay. Most of the time, the title company is the one scheduling the closing, but you need to make sure it's happening, right? And that we're following up on that. Review the title commitment. A lot of us will get into the habit of relying on the title officer to review the title commitment and let us know if there's anything in there. And most of the time that's okay, because we're working with someone we have a relationship with, but it's not their responsibility. So make sure that you are reviewing that and looking for anything. And if you don't know how to read one, make an appointment with somebody at a title company and go sit with them and have them share it with you. They are more than happy to do that. We have Title Alliance here as our preferred vendor and our partner. We're shareholders of Title Alliance. So, reach out to them and make an appointment. They'll be happy to review that process with you. Okay. Same thing with reviewing the closing statement. It's your job. If you've negotiated any kind of concessions, and I don't care who you're representing, buyer or seller, it's your job to make sure that those numbers add up. I one time had an HOA try to slip in a rush fee. and the title company was trying to slip it in there because they screwed up and didn't order the HOA when the escrow was open. And I pushed back. I was like, no, you had this. You're not charging my client. My client would have been none the wiser. He's a Canadian investor. He didn't, what does he know about fees, right? And so I caught that because I was reviewing it. And so you want to make sure those numbers are right. Plus, people are human and typos happen, right? And so extra digits get added to things by mistake. And so it's your job to make sure that that stuff is accurate. And then attend the closing. In the beginning of my career, I went to a couple closings just so I could understand the process. And then I didn't necessarily go after that. I've since kind of changed my tune around that. Having taught this class and having agents come through this class and saying that, they feel like that is like the last stop that they have to bond with the client. Plus, you have some opportunity to create some social media, like, take a picture with them with a giant key and, do those fun, goofy things that you could do at title. But if you've ever had yourself in a situation where you need representation from a lawyer, there is something very comforting standing next to a suit that you could tell anything to, and they have to keep it a secret, right? And so think about your clients, especially a first-time home buyer that's going in there to sign a stack of documents this thick, right? They're nervous. And so even if you just sit there and take up space, you're still there giving them comfort. Okay. So I think it's important, especially new people, you should go to a few closings and at least understand the process, because you can't write a story about going to the circus if you've never been to the circus. And so definitely, try to get to those. Okay. Lastly is the post-closing activities. So mailing the customer service or sending a service survey out. We want to solicit feedback, right? We can't improve our processes or the client experience if we don't get feedback. And so don't be afraid to get negative feedback, because that's an opportunity for you to fix it. Because again, if the average client's worth $65,000, they close and they're unhappy with you and you don't know it, you've just lost out on that, right? And so it's an opportunity to make it right. Change the status in MLS. Make sure that all the information is accurate. Those are finable offenses if your closing date's wrong, your concessions, your sales price, any of those things that from the time that you put it pending to the time it closed. If those things change, make sure that you make it correct, because those are finable things and you don't want to get fined. Change the status in MLS. Remove from websites. Order your just sold or canvas, right? Door knocking. And same thing with the phone calls. And make sure that you're buying it. You're making phone calls that are not on the do not call list. Okay. And then sending out any just sold postcards. You also get, so on that link in Design Center, you get it when it's active, you get it when it's pending, and you get it when it's sold. So you could use those graphics and that stuff that you get from Design Center to push out to your social media. Okay. All right, let's talk about, how am I doing on time? Perfect. So let's talk about buyers, buyer activities. And so again, same thing here. So lead gen, right? Finding buyers face-to-face, open houses, your network, internet leads, remax.com leads. I mean, I've gotten some really good remax.com leads recently. So I feel like, there's some good opportunity there. So pay attention to those. If you're not getting them, make sure your settings are set right in your profile on Max Center. Okay. Yard signs, ads, the internet, right? Craigslist, your social media. It says Lead Street, but it's remax.com now. And then any just listeds that you take, right? You could get buyer leads from those, from having listings, right? So lead conversion. So coming into the office. So getting your mind, again, just like on the listing channel, right? We want to get on the selling channel. We want to really visualize the outcome of this person hiring you to help them buy a house, right? And having a conversation with them. You guys, I cannot stress the importance of doing a buyer consultation enough. People look at someone who's buying a house, they watch those shows on HGTV, right? And I always yell at those shows because it's not reality, right? And even though it's called reality TV, it's not reality. So the client, that's what they think, is that they're going to go out and look at 3 houses and get one for $50,000 less. And that's not reality, right? So we want to build rapport, help them set the tone, uncover their needs and prioritize those, right? Check their motivation and their financial ability. I love that. Financial ability versus how much can you qualify for, right? And then again, with the buyer conversion, you're going to get the roles, my role and your role, what you can expect to me as your agent. and what I expect of you of the client, agree on those, and then talking about a buyer representation agreement, which we've got scripts and dialogues in that class for you, and then have your second appointment. So my buyer consultation is really simple. I go through the whole purchase contract, I go through all of the addendums that are necessary, and I get them to sign the addendums. So we talk about the agency, we talk about the buyer affiliate, the buyer advisory, we talk about the market conditions. I get all that stuff signed and out of the way. And here's the thing, if they accidentally go to an open house and someone says, have you signed something? They're going to say yes. Not necessarily a buyer broker that they've signed with me, but they've signed something. And here's the other thing too, that I've found, that if I spend time explaining what the agency is and what fiduciary duties are, they don't cheat on me because they understand that. And if you invest an hour going through the whole contract and all the pitfalls, all the scary shit that can happen, at the end of that hour, I promise you, they're going to be begging for representation, because now they understand the real reality of buying a house, right? That it's not just watching TV and going and touring homes. Okay. And so if you invest that time, you gain their commitment and their loyalty. And you can also talk about not going to open houses without me, not going to for sale by owners, not going to new homes without me. So you can address all of those things in the roles, right, of what I expect of you as the client. Okay. It's in my mind, this is the abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset. I'm going to do a buyer consultation on a Wednesday. We're going to set our appointment for Saturday morning. We're going to search the MLS. I'm going to send you some properties, but then I'm also going to pick some properties to show you, because I'm not going to rely on you who hasn't either bought a home or hasn't bought a home in 10 years to be able to look at the photos and decide which ones they want to look at. So I'm going to do my job as the agent, because I've listened and I know what their priorities are, and I'm going to pick some properties along with what they've picked. We've gotten far too lazy as agents, just relying on the client. What if the photos suck? My sister-in-law rented a house, and they've since bought, but they rented a house in Stetson Hills, and I had sent it to her 3-4 times, but the photos were terrible. And they ended up living in that house for 4 years. But she kept skipping over it because the photos were bad. And that's a rental. So imagine someone doing that for a house that they want to buy. And don't be afraid to go preview. If the photos are terrible, go preview, right? And look at, and as new agents, previewing is a valuable tool for you to get to know what's the trends, what's the pricing, what's condition, all of those things, right? Especially new homes. I plan on going and looking out. If you guys saw Nate's video and the Monday or the Friday email, there's a new home subdivision out here in Surprise, no lotteries, no waiting lists. So I want to go check it out so that I can speak intelligently and share that information with people. So go preview, know what's on the market, okay? So going back to the consultation, that's my whole consultation. So then I set the appointment for Saturday. We're going to go out and I give you permission. We're going out to look at a house. We're going to go find a house, right? And let's say I show you 10 houses. Let's say there's 10 houses on the market. I'm going to close you so that, and I'm probably jumping ahead of my materials, but I am going to make sure that as we're touring those homes, that we identify the top 3. And so then at the end of the tour, we're going to go back and we're going to look at the top 3. Then we're going to go back to the office and we're going to write a contract. And here's the beauty of that. I've got 3. So if we miss out on the first one, I've got 2 backups, right? And so that's my plan. And maybe I've gotten really lucky in 24 years of doing that. Or maybe it's the plan and the process of setting that client up for success, right? Because when they engage in that and they visualize it, they're excited. They know, hey, we're buying a house on Saturday morning, right? And it's the closing technique of getting them there. So take it, right? Run with it. I share it because it's worked for me. And I think it's the best way to be intentional when working with buyers. And, again, maybe I've gotten really lucky or maybe it's that abundance mindset and setting the client up for success. Okay. All right. So the next thing here, admin prep. So again, you're working with a TC. A lot of these things a TC can help with. So you could ask the transaction coordinator to send a thank you letter for you, right? Or a thank you email, following up with all the things that are going to happen next. Okay. You can actually start creating your buyer file before you even have a deal in escrow inside of SkySlope. That's an option. I personally want to have them work with my preferred lender if I possibly can. It typically helps to just make the transaction go a little bit smoother. If not, vet that lender out, because the lender could be the kiss of death in the transaction. And for me personally, red flag when the lender starts bragging about how long they've been doing it or how great they are, it typically ends up being a nightmare transaction. And so that's just my personal experience. If they brag on that, that's typically like, oh no, this guy's going to suck. So vet them out, right? Make sure you're asking what's going to happen with the process so you understand if it's not your preferred lender. Those of you who are new, Go talk to Motto Mortgage, go make an appointment with Blake or Brian and have them walk you through the process. You should know all the loan products that are available out there for first-time home buyers, your down payment assistance programs. Those are all talking points that if you're at an open house and someone comes in, or I went to dinner with some past clients of mine, and their son they were telling me that the son and the dad got in a huge fight because the son's being disrespectful. And I said, well, why don't we sell him? Let's get him out of the house. Let's get him into a condo. They're like, well, he has no money. And I said, well, I'll get him approved for a down payment assistance program. They're like, that exists, that could happen. I'm like, yeah, that could happen. So we're in the process. They're kind of slow, but we're in the process of making that happen. And so had we not had dinner and them have that conversation, they don't know about down payment assistance programs, right? So have all that knowledge, you guys, so when you meet people, it's a way to convert, right? It's a way to educate and to get people on the path to homeownership, right? So setting up all that stuff, verify with the lender, verify with the client too. You don't want to just take them to the top price point. If they're qualified for 400, but they really only want to spend 3, then respect that. Okay. Because if you go right to 400 in your search, they're going to feel like, oh, Daniel only cares about getting paid. Right. So respect them in that. Let them be the one who ups the price point. Okay. Put them in the database and have a follow-up, right? So you're staying in contact with them. Put them in the MLS, have the search going for them. And these days, I think I would set it up so that it searches often for them, so that every time a new listing comes up, they get notified, just with the way that things are moving. Definitely search the for sale by owner inventory too. And then obviously checking with the client or with the listing agent. If you get to that property and you're going to write, call the listing agent, find out what the seller's situation is, find out how many offers they have, and is there a preferred title company, is there anything that the seller, that your offer can stand out if you do that for the seller, right? Kind of vet that out and find out what the seller's plans are, because you want to write the best offer that you can, right, that gets accepted. I have a form I can send to you guys. It's called the 12 tips for negotiating multiple offers, and I will email that to you guys. It's a workman document that they just rolled out, so I'll send that to you. All right, and then of course, preparing the showing package and booking the appointments. I like to print out a copy for the client copy, and I like to highlight the important things. So bedrooms, baths, square footage, taxes, subdivision, and maybe cross streets, so that they can see that. Those MLS sheets are not real user friendly. So if you highlight those things, it makes it easier for them. Put them in order of how you're going to tour the properties. And then one of the things that as you're showing, right, have them if that house is a no, have them tear it out of the package and crumple it up and throw it in the back seat. That's a really good visual for them to get it out of their mind, right? And then is it a house that would you buy this house today? If this was the only house we were going to look at, would you buy it? If they say no, crumple it up, it's off of our list, right? Get it out of our radar, okay? So mark or showing, so right, have them come back to the office. You're going to review the package. I like to put people in my car. That's my personal opinion. I think a lot of stuff happens in that conversation. Plus, traffic sucks, and if they get stuck behind me at a light, the directions are wrong or whatever, it just makes it for a neater, tighter experience. Plus, if it's a husband and wife, there's dialogue happening that I'm missing out on if they're in a separate car. And so I want to be involved in that process. Okay. And then, if they're asking questions, if they're relocation, I'm able to tell them that, hey, it takes 89 years to grow an arm on a cactus, right? Useless Arizona knowledge, but kind of cool, right? And so you can talk about that stuff, or as you're driving around, you can point out features and amenities and things like that. Okay. My personal opinion, that's why we carry the insurance that we do, is so that we can be safe and have people in our cars. If your car is dirty, go buy yourself a membership and get your car washed on a regular basis. If you're embarrassed by your car, then, first commission check, go get a nice car. When I first started selling real estate on Nate's team, you could not work a $300,000 buyer if you didn't have leather seats. So think about that. $300,000, that's our average sales price right now. So consequently, I've never owned a car that doesn't have leather seats. And so I went out, I got rid of my 4Runner and went and bought a car with leather seats. And so just make sure that you're representing that. And if that's a challenge for you, then, you can work around it, but it's just my personal opinion, have them in the car. As you tour the properties, try not to give away, the money shots, right? Let them discover that. Let them be oohed and awed by the great view instead of you, discovering it, and tour them through, right? Turn on lights. Make sure that you secure the property when you leave. That is a big one, right? Or if you come upon a property that's not secured, let the listing agent know, so that we can make sure that property gets taken care of. Back in the REO days, man, it was there was some scary times and you'd walk into a property and there were squatters in there, because you didn't know if they were doing drugs or whatever, what was going to happen. So make sure that you're putting your safety first. Most things these days are occupied, but make sure you let people know where you're going to go. If you know, Jess, you're a single young girl, make sure that you're putting your safety first. People know where you're at, what time you're going to be home. If you get the heebie-jeebies, you know, stand outside the property. Don't go in. You know, if you're doing an open house and someone gives you the creeps, stand outside, right? Invest in some mace if you need to. So and don't think just because you're men that it can't happen to you, because it can happen. Okay, so definitely put your safety first. All right, next thing is writing the offer, right? Oh, I got a typo on my PowerPoint there. Presenting and writing the offer. So call the agent, get the information you need about where the seller's at. Okay, write your offer, then call to confirm that the offer was received. Technology is great, but technology can not be great. Okay, so make sure it was received. Take it a step further. Offer to present your offer in person or via Zoom to the seller. If there's multiple offers, you have no way to know if your offer was presented unless you were there. Okay, so part of your fiduciary duties, ask to present the offer in person. And then if you do have multiple offers, ask that the seller signs the last, if your offer was rejected or not accepted, make sure you get that signed last page showing that the seller actually did see your offer. Okay, because they have to initial it. They're supposed to initial it. Okay, opening escrow, delivering the title company or delivering earnest money to the title company, super critical that that gets done right away. Make sure everybody has signed copies. Okay, schedule the home inspection, attend the home inspection. I know it's not a money-making activity, but it is a way that you stay in control and keep that client from going off the deep end. When you get a repair list, and Fawn can attest to this, and probably Lynette, you get a repair list that's got 50 items on it, that's an agent who's not in control of that situation. And so when in my consultation, when I get to that part in the contract, I spend time going over the home inspection process and what they can expect. And I talk about the top C's, right? Cost and convenience. So what's it going to cost you to fix that? How convenient after you move in will it be, right? And I want to go for big ticket items. I want the seller to address things that are big ticket items. I don't want to nickel and dime and ask for little peddly stuff. I want stuff that is truly going to be a cost factor for my client. Okay. But you want to communicate that. If you go to the inspection, you stay in control, you keep that client from going off the deep end, and you can ask questions of the inspector. That's what they're there for, right? Ask questions. What does that really mean? What is that for maintenance and longevity of the home, right? Some of these things they find are piddly crap that don't really affect the value of the property, right? But if you're a first-time home buyer, that 57-page report is pretty darn scary, right? But you're there to ask questions and make sure that they are fully aware and understand what exactly is happening. Okay, and then so reviewing that, communicating again, stay in touch. If something's going on, buyer's got some challenges with the financing, communicate that. Don't be the guy who goes MIA. Okay. And of course, any addendums, any changes, all that stuff, that's part of your job to make sure it gets buttoned up and signed and everybody's happy with that. All right, last page. So lastly here is the closing prep. So again, make sure that they get scheduled. Do they need a mobile notary? I had a deal with two gals. Again, she was in Scottsdale, she was in Peoria. We had to set up two mobile notaries, right? So it worked out great. So we didn't have to drive across town. So make sure you're taking care of the client with that. Communicating throughout the process. Again, review the title policy and the closing statements. No matter who you're representing, it's your job to review those. And again, attend the closing. So make that a part of your process. On the post-closing activities, one thing that's not on here that I used to do and all the time, it was part of my process as a buyer's agent. I showed up on moving day and I showed up with food because people don't think about eating on moving day. And if they're moving in July, they're not thinking about drinking water either. And if they're relocating from Chicago, definitely not thinking about drinking water. So I show up with food, and so food and drink, and that's always been very well received, and the client loves it, and they're very appreciative of that. So make that a part of your process to follow up. Show up on moving day. I also follow up. It's on here. Number 46 is 7-day follow up. 5 to 7 days follow up, because here in Murphy's Law, something happens. The garage door springs breaks, or the water heater leaks. Like something happens in those first 5 to 7 days. And they're scrambling, they're not thinking about their home warranty, right? And so you call to say, hey, how's it going? Oh my gosh, we had an issue. Let me call Shelly and Ryan from OneGuard. I'll get this going for you, right? And so it's another opportunity for you to look like a hero, okay? And then you want to follow up on the 1 year anniversary too, and say, can you believe it's been a year? Do an unsolicited CMA. You can see my kitty in the background there. That just jumped up. So follow up on that. And then again, canvas the neighborhood. Just because you represent the buyer doesn't mean you can't canvas the neighborhood. Hey, go meet your new neighbor, Jim and Sally, right? And oh, by the way, I sold this house for this price, right? So again, if I'm thinking about selling and you come hustling and knocking on my door, you stand out, right? Plus, oh, great, nice to meet Jim and Sally, right? And go meet my new neighbors, kind of a lost art, right? And back in the day, people would bring a pie, to welcome you to the neighborhood. We don't do that stuff anymore, right? So yeah, make sure you canvas. And again, if you're going to do the phone calls, make sure that you're buying a list that's credible from a company that scrubbed that stuff. Okay. And then follow up, again, 30 days, follow up with the client. Something that's not on here that we used to also do on Nate's team is we would host a housewarming party. And so back then, we would actually get physical addresses and put those people into our databases. Now you'd probably do stuff digital and do like a Facebook event or an Evite event type thing, but you're still getting email addresses, right? And still able to communicate that or communicate with those people. And think about that. If they, obviously not doing it right now with COVID, but if they're hosting a housewarming party and they have 50 people, you show up and let's say you're good on the grill and you cook all the food, you bring the meat and you cook the food and you got your Remax shirt on and people see that, if they've bought a house or they're thinking about buying a house, that's going to make you look really cool that you showed up and you're being a servant and cooking on the grill, right? And that you provided the meat. Don't provide the alcohol. That's a risk factor. Okay. So don't, a liability. So don't do that, but you could certainly provide the meat. And then we used to actually have yard signs, directionals that said, a housewarming party, and they were reflective. And so we would put those out to drive people to the house. And so that was something else we did, was we had signs. So housewarming parties, client parties, that is a great way to lead gen and create new contacts. Rose actually had a party. It was a housewarming / house buying seminar type thing. It was one of her son's best friends. He bought a house, and so he invited all his buddies that were in that bracket of age that should be buying their first house. She had a lender there. She went and they just talked about it. So the guy who bought the house was the one bragging about how cool it was to own a home, getting his friends excited. And I think if I remember right, they pre-qualified 3 people that night, and I'm pretty sure she sold at least one of them from that event. And so could you do something like that? I mean, to me, that's a great way to lead gen, right? Not obviously while we're in COVID, but let's say hopefully in 6 months we all get vaccinated and we're all good and back to normal. So it's something to think about as a way to lead gen. And lastly, just our last page here on page 22 is the summary, right? So we have our potential. Don't leave 75% of your potential on the table. We want to maximize our output by being effective and efficient with our time blocking, effective and efficient with our processes, right? Being intentional and proactive with how we spend our time and what our activities are. And of course, you just got all the checklists of everything that you should be doing and more when you take a listing or when you work a buyer. So with that being said, onward to your quest to reach your potential, right? And have a kick butt 2021. So any comments, questions, anything before we wrap up?
Hey, I just want to say congrats to Thomas and those house deals you did this month. So awesome, Thomas. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Daniel. I've had a lot of help with Fawn Star. She's been an awesome mentor. Thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Very good. Well, and that should get all the rest of you excited that yours is just around the corner, right? So cool. Okay, so Thursday, you guys, is our office meeting. We have 2 guests coming in. I actually got to see them speak at Leverage last week. They did $67 million in the Denver market. And that's a significant number considering that the whole MLS currently in Denver has 1,300 homes. The whole MLS. Not just single family, but the whole entire MLS. So, and they did it all via social media. And so they consider themselves social media influencers. And so they are going to share their process with that and what that looks like. So hopefully you guys will tune in. They're super cool chicks, and they're Remax as well. I'm just appreciative that they're willing to share their insider information. So we all have an opportunity to be social influencers. And so make sure you tune in 8:45 for networking. And then I think they're going to get started about 9:15, 9:30. So be sure to tune in. That's what we got on the calendar this week. So awesome. All right. If there's anything I can do to help you guys, reach out. Otherwise, have a great day. Stay safe and go sell something. Okay.
Great class. Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.